So we're going to have a look at some other things that we can do now. If you remember, we were looking at drawing some squares using this rect function, and circles using ellipse, and we'd filled using a red, green and blue, and we'd created our canvas as well here at the beginning of our kind of like draw function here. But I'm going to want to create some variables now, and it might become a bit clear later on kind of why that is. But what I want to do is I want to move this rectangle in my draw function across to the right, because animation is part of JavaScript, or P5 in JavaScript. Now, you may see var being used to create a variable. And I want in here, I want to have an x and a y variable for these, because I'm going to want to change it. I want to change where the square is drawn. So you might see something like this, var y equals 100, and you'll see when it runs, it will still work. So I'm using the function name here, x and y, that I've declared here at the beginning. But actually, a more common way to declare and initialize your variable is using let. Var is a little bit more kind of out of date, but let is the kind of generally the one that you'll see used more modernly. So we'll use let to declare and initialize, do I spell that right? I'm not sure. My variables up here, and I've got x and y at the top, and you can see I'm then using x and y inside this draw function. Now they are outside of the draw function. I could have put them inside. These are what we would call global variables, because they can be used by any function, but I could have used them inside like that, but it's good practice if I think that these are variables that I'm going to be using in other functions in my code a little bit later, to make them global functions so they're outside of the scope of just this draw function. So what do I want to do? Well, what I want to do is I want to increase, let's just increase the x by 1. So I'm going to increase x, and that should move to the right my rectangle. So after I have used it here when it's 150, I then want to increase it by 1. So you might see something like this: x equals x plus 1. And what's going to happen then is it's going to do all this, it's going to draw, it's going to do this draw, it's going to do it once, and it's after it's drawn it, it's then going to increase it by 1, so then it'll be 151. And then it keeps looping around this draw function. It keeps looping around about 60 frames a second, I believe. So it will keep drawing it, but the x this time is 150, then 151, and so on and so on. So let's run it and see what happens. So you can see now that my rectangle, my square, is moving along the canvas from left to right. It goes off the screen, that's fine, but just as an example, let's change this to y, and let's see what happens. So if it's gonna increase y, if we think back to what we were looking at with the coordinates, I think that's going to move the square down. There you are. So it's going to move it down. It's going to continue, that's fine, but you'll see that it's doing it at 1 frame there. 60 times per second. Each frame is going to be drawn using this draw function. Let's just have a look at a better way of doing this, though. There is a kind of slightly shorter version of doing that. It will do the same thing, but you can write the variable name plus equals, and then how much you want to increase it by, and in this case it is 1. Okay, so there we are. It is working. It is moving it over for me. Now, let me just show you, we've been using this draw function, but it's quite common, in fact it's expected in P5 that you'd have a setup function, setup function as well. Now, the draw is where we're going to be drawing to the canvas. That's a little bit like where you're going to be playing. It's going to kind of cycle through that bits of code 60 times a second. But in the setup, that's where we're going to set it up once at the beginning. It's just like the initial, a bit like a background maybe, or something like that. So I could add this canvas code into here, into setting up the canvas. Okay, so when I click run now, you'll see that works absolutely fine. It creates the canvas. Let's just play around with this. Let's move bits into the setup and let's just explore and experiment and see what happens to them. Okay, so that's interesting. So what's happening there is in my setup function, I am just once setting the background color here to 255, which that's just setting it initially. But then after each square and after I've moved it along, you'll see that this is there. That's the line, the outline of it is being left behind it. Okay, so we don't want to have this background inside the setup function. Okay, but that is there. I could also try putting this code in there where I draw my square. Let's have a look at what happens. Oh, did you notice that? So when I click run, you'll notice that when I click run, it's going to once draw a square. Okay, so it's just doing it once. It kind of flashes up. You may be just about be able to see it, and then it disappears, because then after that, after the setup, then we call the background, setting it to this, and then this doesn't really do anything here at all. So that's a good way to just have your code. So we're setting up the canvas here, and then we're inside the draw function. We are then putting the background color in and doing the thing. This is where we're drawing to the canvas what it is that we're drawing, the animation or something like that.